Hey, what's up, everybody? For Malcolm X College, I'm Jed Dulanis, and you're watching Nursing Power Points. Today, we're covering the Cultural Equity Project. We're going to talk about cultural equity, racism, microaggressions, micro-insults, and pregnancy rituals and challenges for transgender men. Let's get into it. What is culture? Throughout human evolution, people collectively try to make sense of the world, and so they develop beliefs, values, ideas, and perceptions about how the world works. These beliefs influence their behavior, and their behavior, in turn, influences their beliefs. This cyclic, repeating dynamic of beliefs influencing behavior, and then behavior influencing beliefs, that's culture. We perceive cultural adaptations both tangibly and intangibly. We perceive culture tangibly in things like clothing, technology, food, and the arts, and behavior. We perceive culture intangibly in language and beliefs and spirituality. What's equity? Equity looks like the word equality, but they're different. We should strive towards both these things individually and collectively as a society. Equality is treating everyone the same. That sounds very similar to the nursing ethical principle of justice. Justice is the fair and equal treatment of everyone. This is great, but everyone is not treated equally in our society before they become our patients. And this fact insidiously influences the care we provide our patients. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation says that equity is about fairness and everyone getting what they need based on their own situation because we're not all the same. A person's health depends on many factors, things like their environment, schools, and workplaces, to name a few. We call these social determinants of health. Here are some social determinants of health, and look at that. Culture is an important social determinant of health. A person's culture is a factor in determining the state of their health and access to health care. Let's combine these concepts of culture and equity into one concept and define cultural equity. Cultural equity is taking into account a person's culture to provide fair access and treatment to health care. We can do this collectively and systemically on a policy level to influence municipal, regional, and national health. Or we can do this individually in our day-to-day interpersonal interactions with our patients. Let's bring it back to the individual level and talk about my personal cultural identifiers. Cultural identifiers are aspects of one's culture that help a person form their individual identity. Here's a list of cultural identifiers. There are many cultural identifiers that make me, me, but for the sake of this project, my three cultural identifiers are ethnicity and a cisgender sexual orientation. I identify as a second-generation Filipino American, which means that I am the son of Filipino immigrants. I am an American. I am a Filipino who does not speak the language, but still values other cultural adaptations and want to pass them on to my children when I have them. Finally, I am a cisgender queer person. Cisgender meaning that I have male genitalia, I look like a man, and I believe myself to be a man. My sexual orientation identity is fluid. Chronologically, I've identified as straight, gay, bisexual, and more recently, a bisexual who identifies as gay, but now I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm queer, I'm here, I'm young, I'm available, let's move on. I would say that my two strongest identifiers are my Filipino identity and my queer identity. My Filipino identity because I look in the mirror and there I am. I can't get away from it. I love being Filipino and I want to raise my kids to identify as Filipino too. Even though I don't speak the language, I find validation and comfort in my rich cultural heritage. I love my dysfunctional family. I love our food. I love hearing our language, even if I don't understand it. I love our dances. I hope I never forget how to dance these dances. This is what makes me me. And look at this woman. She's fierce, and so am I. My queer identity is strong too because it's had a significant impact on my relationship with my mom. I don't speak to her because she thinks that God doesn't want queer people to exist, so we're at an impasse. Here's a photo of me at the Chicago Pride Parade. This is about 12 years and 40 pounds ago. One stereotype about Asians is that we're quiet, submissive, and passive. In general, this is not true, but I think this stereotype comes from misperceptions from the dominant white American society's interactions with Asian immigrants. Some Asian cultures value silence, group cohesion, group consensus, and uplifting the group or family unit rather than the individual. This is in stark contrast to a white American individuality that's perhaps one of the many reasons why this stereotype perpetuates itself. This stereotype is particularly frustrating for me because it's actually personally affected my job evaluations and love life. A stereotype about the LGBTQ community is that we're all living this fabulously opulent, fashionable lifestyle. Like me, you might have watched Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and Sex in the City and thought, oh, they're really put together. Look at those bars on TV and you think they're really feminist and diverse and there can't possibly be any racism here. And this is not really the case. The LGBTQ community has significant problems with feminism, racism, and class, just like the dominant American straight culture that surrounds it. This was a real eye-opener for me decades ago. In America, racism is a systemic oppression of people of color to perpetuate white supremacy and power through the institutions and foundations of our society. Professor Manning Marable says, a strikingly different way to view the concept of race is an unequal relationship between social groups based on the privileged access to power and resources by one group over another. Race is historically and socially constructed, created, and recreated by how people are perceived and treated in the normal actions of everyday life. So racism is not individualistic, it is pervasive and systemic, and it flows insidiously into our individual interactions with each other. Interpersonal racism is expressed in oppressive acts between individuals. Why define racism? Well, as nurses, we need to know the etiology of our problems, right? And interpersonal racism is something we can identify and address individually within ourselves. But before we do that, we need to know what causes it. So let's move on to microaggressions. Microaggressions are a type of interpersonal racism consisting of covert, commonplace, and subtle language and behavior that's insulting and demeaning to the recipient, but not enough to make a fuss about. Oftentimes, the microaggressor and even the recipient might not realize that it's happening. Microaggressions can be intended or unintended. They're subtle, ambiguous, and easily deniable. Here are some examples of verbal and behavioral microaggressions. The second one happened to a coworker of mine for weeks after the Black Panther movie came out. And here's a personal story. There's this long tradition of straight women coming to gay bars to celebrate their bachelorette parties. This was really problematic before gays and lesbians could marry in the US. These bachelorettes usually get really drunk, and more than once they've waved a plastic phallus in my face, and it's like, cool, you're literally and figuratively rubbing your privilege in my face. Great. Micro-insults are verbal microaggressions. They're subtle things that we say that are rude and demeaning to a person's culture and identity. And here are some examples. Saying, you're pretty cute for an Asian, and then not going out with them. This has happened to me so many times. I didn't really think anything of it until the third time that it actually happened. And also saying, that's so gay, when referring to something that's displeasing. I've been guilty of doing this too. So let's talk about strategies to overcome microaggressions and micro-insults. Self-assessment. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Examine your culture and your own biases before making judgments or taking actions. Do your homework. Psychologist Kevin Nadal of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice has been writing books on microaggressions. He suggests reading blogs, personal essays, and understanding the lived experience of historically marginalized peoples, watch documentaries, and try to think outside of your own perspective. Empathy. Learn it and learn it well. Believe the victims. Don't automatically dismiss them when they call you out or call someone else out. And be aware of your mental health. Confronting racism and repression is draining. Nadal says, in a world where we all fought for social justice all the time, we would be getting into productive arguments and fights and having protests every day and changing laws. But we don't, and we can't, because we're human and we need to rest. As we move on to part 2, let's talk about providing care for people from other cultures different than our own. Last semester, I was doing a head-to-toe assessment of an older African-American male patient. While palpating his abdomen, I noticed him tense up. Because my African American instructor from the previous semester told me that this was a cultural indication of pain for African American men, I asked him if he was in pain, and I did a pain assessment. I grew up in a white American society, so I'm used to pain being vocalized loudly, so it would have been easily missed. It would have been easy to miss this pain assessment. I respected this man by recognizing his pain and following up with an appropriate assessment and notifying his nurse. Now, let's talk about customs, rituals, and challenges that transgender men in America face in antepartum, interpartum, and postpartum. First, here are some definitions. Pause your screen to read them, or just Google it. So the brief for this assignment wants me to discuss customs and rituals that transgender men practice, but as with most members of the LGBTQ community, traditional customs and rituals are more closely tied to those individual members' ethnic and religious identities. Also, rituals are defined here as acts and procedures designed by society to guide members of a community in an orderly way through major life transitions. And that's not really the case with transgender men. There's no orderly way prescribed by society to follow. They have to create their own rituals. Because of this, I'm going to discuss challenges and commonalities that transgender men tend to face during pregnancy. Stereotype challenges for transgender men have to do with American society's dominant belief that cisgender females are the only people who can give birth. Because of this, random people and healthcare workers are more likely to assume cisgender female identity and misgender the transgender man using feminine pronoun titles, like she, her, mom, miss, instead of the transgender person's preferred gender pronouns. Antepartum challenges include misgendering, gender dysphoria, testosterone use, and family planning. Regarding family planning, issues may revolve around having genetically related children, working with a significant other, DNA donors, or female or surrogates to carry the pregnancy. Ritual and ceremony may be developed by the parents around the fertilization method. Decisions regarding testosterone use are a ritual that transgender men may face. They may decide to stop testosterone prior to pregnancy or continue it during pregnancy. Discontinuation of testosterone is recommended prior to pregnancy because testosterone use can affect fertility and fetal development. Discontinuation of testosterone will lead to significant changes in body image. So discontinuing the testosterone, constant misgendering, and major body changes that affect body image can compound and result in gender dysphoria. Transgender men also report consistent and persistent loneliness. They have societal expectations of who is allowed to have children conflicting with their personal desires for family and gender identity. Also, there are very few public roles of what transgender pregnancy and parenting looks like. Intrapartum challenges. The defining ritual of intrapartum revolves around whether to have vaginal birth or a C-section for the delivery. A C-section may be chosen because a vaginal birth might conflict with the transgender man's gender identity. This decision and ritual is very important because this person has given up so much of their identity to give birth to another life. Postpartum rituals include chest feeding and reinitiation of testosterone. Choosing when to reinitiate testosterone affects other parenting decisions like chest feeding because increased testosterone can suppress lactation. Postpartum depression should be assessed because gender dysphoria and misgendering continues. So I've been showing you photos of a local couple, Precious and Miles Brady Davis. Precious is a friend of mine and former coworker, and they had their child in December of 2019. The birth certificate for their child, Zane, originally misgendered both of them, but thanks to a new law, the birth certificate now reflects their gender identity. Here's my bibliography. You can pause it if you want to read it. And there you have it. Cultural Equity Project 2020 done, son. Like and subscribe below, and thanks for supporting the channel. Click on the links below to purchase merch and support the channel. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Do you like this nursing content with a chill, everyday vibe? Don't forget to like and subscribe below for more content. Click that bell for future reminders. Follow me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram for more updates and content. Shout out to Professors Piltower and Abdullah. Give me an A. Belated congratulations to Precious and Miles Brady Davis, and thanks to all my Patreon patrons. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Like and subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.